Not got one of these in my back garden. I've always wanted one. All my life I've been interested in locomotives, you know, but they really started with much more humble beginnings than this one behind me. Only a slight detour on my way home from school to go to the engine sheds on Crescent Road, and the vision really has never left me, you know. There'd be row upon row of steam locomotives all getting steam up, and nearly dark in winter, you know, and all the smoke and all windows seem to be yellow in corners in all the little offices and everything, and that wonderful smell, you know, and fog and coal and black oil everywhere, you know. It was quite, to me it was quite romantic. Like all little boys' dreams, you know, I always wanted to be an engine driver. You know, on my way to school we actually got as close to the railway as what these pictures are. I know it always seemed quite exciting and romantic. All my relations worked on the railway, and there were one or two engine drivers and one or two signalmen, and some did up the telegraph poles. I don't know, maybe that's where I get my climbing ability from. To find out all about the railways and their history, this is the place to head for. Here at the National Railway Museum in York, the world's greatest collection of locomotives, everything from the latest diesel and electric machinery to way back to Stephenson's rocket. That's the original inside the museum, and they've also got a working replica outside. And they're going to let me have a go on it. I'm really looking forward to this. And then Dave, what are you doing, mate?
Welcome to the National Railway Museum.
I'm really looking forward to this.
Aye.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if we can get the thing underway. We need to get some water in because the water's getting a bit low.
There's no injector or anything?
No, it wasn't invented then.
Yeah, no brakes.
No brakes, no whistle even. Even the whistle wasn't invented.
Yeah.
We'll have to blow this horn, Fred, because we haven't got a hooter on it.
Audible sounding device of our approach.
Yes, the audible means of approach. Yes, so here we go. Oh, you're off, Fred. Good one.
This was the prototype for the steam locomotive as we know it. The rocket was designed and built by Robert Stephenson at his locomotive works in Newcastle, and it was the great breakthrough in locomotive design. For 25 years before the rocket was built, engineers have been trying to design a steam engine that would pull wagons along a track. Richard Trevithick built the first one in 1804, but in all early ones, the performance was limited by the design, which was basically that of a mobile beam engine. The rocket increased the power and speed of the engine relative to its weight. It was built to compete in the Raynal trials. These have been set up to help decide what motive power should be used for a new railway between Liverpool and Manchester. 3 other engines entered the competition, but the rocket outperformed them all. Yeah, I used to dream about this bloody thing. I used to do drawings of it when I was a little lad. Right. And on the Bolton Trinity Street station, there used to be a beautiful brass model of it in a glass case. Right. And you put a penny in and the thing went for you.
I'll show you that. We've got that in the workshop, Fred. Yeah, we've got that in the workshop. I'll show you.
No vacuum brakes. Right. Did you like that? That's better than knocking chimneys down.
Well, there's a chimney you can't knock down, Fred.
Oh, I'll come and paint it for you. Look at that. Want it doing. But it was Robert Stephenson's father, George, who is credited as being the father of the railways. George Stephenson was a mining engineer, and it was in the coalfields of the northeast that the railways, as we know them, really began to operate. Railways began their life as an industrial transport system. Hull's railway centre is close to the south bank of the River Tyne, and here you can see one of Stephenson's early efforts to use steam power to transport coal. But his engine on this railway didn't go anywhere. It stood at the top of the hill and pulled wagons of coal with a rope. Here we are, sat on top of a big hill in between Sunderland and Gateshead-on-Tyne, in an engine house that's got a bloody great winch in it, and there's a wire goes down one side of the hill and down the other one to God knows where. And this is Alan who actually operates the winch. And how many tons of coal did they let down in the olden days? You know,
I mean, going that way, there's about 12 trucks. You know, with about 10 ton on each train.
Yeah, that's
coming up the other way. There's 6 trucks. You know, full.
Hull's Railways claim to be the world's only preserved standard gauge rope-all railway. Stephenson's original engine has been replaced by a more modern electric engine, but the mechanics of the operation are still as they were when Stephenson designed it.
The trouble is, it's not a steady gradient all the way down. You know, it varies, like, so you've got to try and so. And of course, with this handbrake here, you apply the handbrake and about 3 days later. Try again. Yeah! Right in. No, right in.
Keep going until it won't go.
Keep going until it won't go any further. That's the ticket. Super.
All right. We're in gear.
We're in gear.
Passenger railways weren't very long in coming, and it was George Stephenson who was the engineer for the first of them. Here in the northeast is where it all started. This is North Road Station in Darlington, and it's situated on the original route of the Stockton to Darlington Railway. In 1825, George Stephenson came steaming through here, driving this thing, pulling the world's first passenger train. This is one of the world's first successful locomotives. As you can see, it's rather a ponderous piece of tattle. Like the guy who drove it sat on this buffet here, and he would alternate between sitting down and playing with these two handles up here, which of course, you know, altered the valve timing of the thing. To me, it looks a lot more complicated than quite a modern locomotive. I mean, basically all as it is a twin-cylinder beam engine and a boiler. From Darlington, I went to nearby Shildon to see a place that played an important part in the early history of the railways. This is a very historic spot in the history of the railways of England. This is Shildon in County Durham, where once the Stockton to Darlington railway line ran. It didn't really run from Stockton to Darlington. It started at some coal mines about 2 miles down the road and carried on to Stockton down to the sea, where they loaded all the coal onto ships. Timothy Ackworth, who was the superintendent engineer of this line, lived in a cottage over there, and these buildings behind were his workshops where he built new locomotives and did major repairs on the existing ones. Timothy Ackworth was also the builder of one of the other engines that competed in the Rainhill trials. Ever since I was a little lad, you know, I've always called this engine the sarsaparilla engine. You know, ever since I saw it in the picture books, you know. I know it's like French, you know, I can't really pronounce it right, but Alan here, who knows more about it than me, can perhaps tell me what it's really called.
Well, she's really called Sans-Pareil, which means without parallel or without equal.
Oh,
Timothy
right.
Hackworth was taught French quite early, at an early age, by his mother.
Yeah.
And although he could never remember where he knew French from,
Yeah,
so
that's interesting.
hence a lot of his locomotives had quite strange names.
Yeah.
That we would compare them today.
You know, I once read in a book when I was a small boy that there were a bit of like industrial espionage. Mr. Stevenson were responsible for casting the cylinders, and of course the core moved a bit, and when they bored them out they were quite thin on one side and thick on the other.
Yeah.
And at the initial warm-up at Rainhill, it did very well, you know, and then bang, they blew a great lump out at the side of the cylinder.
Where it should have been 1 3/4 inches thick was actually 5/8 of an inch thick.
Yeah.
So it held early on, but during the trials under real load, unfortunately it went. So Hackworth supporters were up in arms against the Stevenson supporters, saying industrial espionage.
Yeah.
But as Timothy Hackworth had 24 of these cast and selected 2 he thought was going to be the best.
So that couldn't be true.
I don't think so. I think Timothy Hackworth is definitely one of the unsung heroes of the development of the railways. He's, in many ways, he's known around the globe much more than he is within this country.
This thing here is somewhere else, isn't it? It's a big one, this one, isn't it?
Superb engine, marvellous engine. We've only just finished conserving her.
Yeah.
And in actual fact, something on here that may be a pleasant surprise to you is that you'll recognise this wheel as being inside the blue spot on the English £5 note. Yeah. Timothy Hackworth's plug wheel.
I never knew that about £5 notes, but that's one of these wheels which were nearly on all these early locomotives.
George Stephenson actually credited Timothy Hackworth with reinventing the wheel, and this is how he actually did it. He cast the inside, and it was fitted onto the axle, and then the outside was also cast. Yeah. And then the 2 parts were joined with these wooden pegs. Yes. And then at the 4 points, north, south, east, and west, you'd put these bolts in. And
that way really stop it flying off, wouldn't it?
Yeah. You could true it up just like with bicycle spokes. You true a wheel. Yeah. At a time when 60% of the workforce is employed building and fixing wheels, with this wheel, that fell to 20% of the workforce.
By the 1830s, the locomotive had the basic shape that we are now all familiar with. Different types of locos were designed for passenger trains and goods. Passenger locos had large driving wheels so that they could run fast. This is it. This is my favourite locomotive. Patrick Stirling single wheeler. The one I dream about. They're going to let me climb on board and feel at the controls. It must have been fantastic to do 70 miles an hour on this on a cold winter's night with a full moon out, you know. So it's quite simple, you know, it's almost like a big traction engine. It's got air conditioning, windows, not that you really need it, you know, with a cab like this. It mustn't have been so bad going forwards, but going backwards have been a bit uncomfortable. But it's still my favourite engine. The coming of the railways had brought about a transport revolution. People could now travel around the country in safety in large numbers and much more quickly than they could by stagecoach. By the 1890s, branch lines were being built into some of the most remote parts of the country. When I was at Killhope lead mines in the North Pennines, I visited the little South Tynedale Railway. It follows part of the route of the old Halt Whistle to Alston branch line, and it was built when there was still a lot of lead mining activity in these remote parts.
That's fine. Excellent.
The trains here are all hauled by restored industrial steam and diesel engines from Britain and from abroad. And like most Preservation Society lines, it's run entirely by volunteers. There's a lot of hard work involved, but it's all very enjoyable.
That's it, just a little bit. That's it, you're in.
Steam locomotives were built to last, and there were still some 19th century locos that I remember running in Bolton when I was a lad, and this is one of them. All small boys have somebody who they call their uncle who isn't really their uncle, and I had one of them when I was a little lad. And he actually drove an Aspinall locomotive like that on the marshalling yards in Bolton near Trinity Street Station. And on Saturday mornings I used to go and ride with him, you know, and it was quite wonderful because when, as you can see, it's hardly got any cab at all. And when it was raining hard, they had a big sheet that hooked on the back of the cab and down to the tender. And it was lovely and snug and warm on there, you know, and he used to give me drinks out of his brew can. And then, of course, one day he disappeared and, you know, I suppose he died and the engine disappeared. And in fact, there's only one of these engines survived, and that's it over there, you know. It's quite nice, beautiful engine. As speeds increased and train loads grew heavier, locomotives grew in size, and in the 1920s the Great Western Railway locomotives were amongst the most advanced. By the 1930s, famous streamline locomotives like Mallard were being built, and the Coronation class was one of the most powerful express passenger locomotives in Britain. I remember some of these quite vividly. It was quite exciting when a streamline one used to come past Bolton, you know. Early days after the war, I never saw so many, but later on near the end, I think they got to coming round our way more than they used to do. That was quite a thing to remember. But the excitement of steam was soon to go, to be replaced by this. In 1955, the first diesel locomotive, Deltic, was built and signalled the end of the line for the steam locomotive. Throughout the 60s, all these lovely old engines started to rust away in scrapyards. But there were too many people who loved the romance of the steam loco to let it disappear completely. So the railway preservation movement was born. The Middleton Railway in Leeds was the first standard gauge railway in Britain to be run by volunteers, which was very appropriate because it was the first railway in the world to be established by an Act of Parliament. This was in 1758. Today, the Middleton Railway Trust has a big collection of industrial locomotives. They run on a track that follows the original route of an horse-drawn wagonway that was built to carry coal from the collieries just south of Leeds to the city centre. The great growth of railway preservation movement has meant that the engineering skills that were needed to keep these locomotives running have not disappeared completely. One of the main centres for engineering work on steam locomotives today is here at the Birmingham Railway Centre. Yeah then, Fred. How many of them have you got to pull out?
107. Dave's busy cutting them out.
Yeah. These are the superheater tubes, aren't they?
That's right. Superheaters go up inside those.
Yeah, there's even more tubes go down the middle of them tubes, isn't there?
That's right.
Yeah. The workshops are full of locomotives that are being taken apart for repair and renovation, including some very famous ones. This is Bob here, who's in charge of the works, as you might say. And blooming heck, it looks as though you've got a tall oiler on here. What's exactly are you about with this one?
This one behind us, Princess Elizabeth, probably the most famous locomotive the London Midland and Scottish Railway possessed before the war. It's fairly obvious who it was named after.
Yeah.
Remember it many, many years ago, in the days when train spotting was a popular hobby.
Yeah.
And this was one of the regular locomotives that used to go through there.
Yeah.
46201.
One of the engines they've restored here is the Great Western locomotive, Rood Ashton Hall, and what a magnificent job they've done on it. Then, Alistair, how are you doing, man?
All right, yeah.
I believe you're the young man who's done a great deal of the restoration on this thing.
A bit of it, yeah.
Yeah. All this pipe work,
yeah.
All these lovely fittings still here, because some of them look like new.
No, when we started there was nothing.
Nothing at all.
The gauge glass isn't original. The gauge frame that we had in stock. So it's the regulator stuffing box.
Yeah.
All the manifold and the brake valve, lubricators all new.
That's somewhere around there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right.
You got 25 inches on the train. Yeah,
well, the brakes are off now, aren't they?
Yeah, they're off.
Is the tender brake off?
The handbrake's just been taken off.
Right.
Yep.
Now where we go then?
Give him a whistle.
Oh yeah. It up a bit.
Yeah, bring it back to 45%.
Somewhere around there, isn't it?
That's it. Just there, that's it. Away we go.
We're alright, that's it. Where it says stop, isn't it?
Yeah.
In the middle of the night, you'd hear this steam whistle howling and a mainline locomotive would come along and it would pass by this narrow entry in between my Uncle Fred's temperance bar and the local barbers. They'd have the fire hall door open and you'd see the driver and the fireman silhouetted against the shaft of light coming out of the back of the cab. And it must have been, to me as a small boy, an unbelievably exciting thing to do, you know, be an engine driver. I like the big engines, but on my travels I've seen some great little trains as well. The Festiniog Railway runs from the sea at Portmaddock to the slate quarries at Blenhew Festiniog. Most of the early railways were built around mines of one sort or of another. And here in Snowdonia they'd got to get all this slate down to the sea by packhorse until the 1830s when they built a railway down to Portmaddock. As railways developed, narrow gauge lines were constructed where the landscape made standard gauging possible. The Festiniog Railway is one of the typical slate quarry lines in North Wales. It was first worked by horsepower, but in 1863 it became the first narrow gauge line to use steam locomotives. They have a lot of young volunteers working here, and when I had a ride on the footplate, the driver was David Williams, who was taking charge of the loco for the first time. I'm in charge of the water. The Festiniog is a really good example of railway preservation. And in the workshops they are building complete new locos using the latest computer technology to design them.
Flange fits on.
On the stubs.
That's it, the flange for the superheater header. This smoke box, this was drawn by a guy that lives 65 miles north of New York.
Oh God.
And he, when the drawing was complete, he emailed the drawing here and we've actually constructed it. So,
to his drawing, yes.
I doubt if you have a computer in your workshop, do you?
Oh no, no.
We just use them as a tool.
I'm still on feet and inches.
So we're building this one from scratch, basically. Though it's changed recently, you see, it's not actually a replica now. It's actually a rebuild. Because we found the reversing lever.
Bits and pieces.
That's up, but we found the reversing lever from the original engine. So that sort of turned it into a rebuild.
My steamroller's like that.
Is it?
Now told me the casting's original. But it's going to be a splendid thing. Everywhere you go around here, there's somebody making a brand new engine.
Well, I think it's becoming a habit. You know, we've got to help the old timers, not you. These old engines. Some of them, this one, Prince, is one of the oldest engines. Well, it is the oldest working engine in the world when it's working.
And this one, of course, is a brand new one, isn't it?
That's right. Yeah.
This is the frame in here for it.
Yeah, that's right. The only bit we've got of one of the originals. This is a replica of a Linton and Barnstaple locomotive.
Yeah.
And sadly, the Linton and Barnstaple Railway was entirely scrapped in 1935. But we have got one original bit. And that's the chimney off one of the engines. So again, rather like Roland's Taliesin, this is sort of a rebuild.
North Wales is famous for its great little trains like the Festiniog, but there are some big ones here as well. These are the sort of engines that I remember best. One of the most common round where I live were the LMS back fives, and while I was in North Wales I got the chance to ride on the footplate of one at the Llan-Gothlan Railway. Travelling along on here reminds me of the first time I ever rode on the footplate. On reaching sort of early Manor, I met this engine driver in a pub who immediately recognised me, great interest in engines and locomotives and the like. And he said, if you want to ride on my engine, buy a penny platform ticket and go and sit on the very end of the platform, which I did, and this great thundering engine come rolling in on a dirty winter's night, and he beckoned me to jump on it, and I went all the way to Rochdale and back. I had the job of firing the locomotive, and I remember him saying to me, it don't matter what you do as long as you don't lose the shovel. And it was really, really good fun, and I did that lots and lots of times. Yeah, put his head out and bloody iron stanchion. Miles an hour. This steamroller of mine were made in 1910, but way before then, at the beginning of Queen Victoria's reign, they were already building some fairly large and substantial steam engines, you know, and it were about this period when they built the first iron ships propelled by steam. The first steam-powered iron ship was the SS Great Britain, which was built by the greatest engineer of the Victorian age, Isambard Kingdom Brunel. When he was appointed engineer for the new railway to be built between London and Bristol in 1833, he decided that a 7-foot wide track would give a much faster, smoother, more fuel-efficient ride than the 4-foot 8.5-inch gauge, which had become standard by then. For his Great Western Railway, he designed everything himself: the track, the locomotives, the rolling stock, the tunnels, and the bridges and the stations. He built spectacular road bridges as well, like the Clifton Suspension Bridge. But his greatest achievement was building this. The SS Great Britain was one of the outstanding engineering achievements of the Victorian age. The first ocean-going ship to be constructed of iron and driven by a steam-powered propeller. Isambard Kingdom Brunel, my hero. In his honour today, I think I'll wear my tall hat while I have a look round his ship. Really, anything to do with engineering on a grand scale, he was the guy to get to have a look at it. Whilst he was constructing the Great Western Railway, he got this grand vision to link New York with Bristol and the Great Western Railway. And this is the second of the 3 ships that he made. The SS Great Britain, which lies here now in the very dock that it was constructed in 1843. She was in service doing regular sailings to New York and to Australia until 1886, before ending her working life as a store ship in the Falklands. In 1970, she was salvaged and brought back across the Atlantic to sail under Brunel's famous bridge to the Great Western Dock for restoration. The restoration programme's still going on, and below deck you can see how they are restoring the ship's engine to make it look just the way it did when Brunel built it. As you walk around it, you can see what a huge engineering project it was for its day. As well as being the first to use steam power, it was at nearly 2,000 tons. The biggest and heaviest ship to have been built up to this time. But steam power was also starting to be used for much smaller and lighter craft. To see a particularly fine collection of smaller steamboats, I went back up north to the Lake District. Back in 1845, the year that the Great Britain first sailed from Liverpool to New York, the first steamboat was launched on Lake Windermere. Around this time, wealthy northern industrialists started to build their homes in the Lake District. One of these was Henry William Snyder, a London-born merchant who was responsible for creating the steel industry at Barrow-in-Furness. In 1869, he moved to Windermere and he had his own steam yacht built. Here at the Steamboat Museum you can see a collection of boats from the great age of steam on the lake, including Snyder's boat, Esperance.
It is a twin-screw steam yacht built in 1869.
Yeah.
And was built up in Rutherglen in Scotland.
Yeah. How did they get it down here?
Well, they built it up there, sailed it down the Irish Sea to Barrow, and loaded it onto a railway wagon with a steam crane, and brought it up on the railway line from Barrow to Lakeside, which is down at the foot of Windermere.
Yeah, I've been there to where they have the railway. I know I read in a book once that they were sinking this mine shaft somewhere in Barrow for the iron ore, and the money were run out, and they were really getting a bit desperate. And he sacked them all, and they said, well, you know, we'll do a week for now for you. And in that next week they hit it. The best seaman, bloody iron ore in Barrow-in-Furness.
That's right, yeah.
And it made them all rich.
It was a massive deposit that they came across.
Yeah.
And of course, really, that was the beginning of his
empire in a way.
That's right, and him becoming an extremely wealthy man. He came down from the house to the pier, Esperance, steam up ready, waiting for him. His butler walked down with his breakfast. That's it. He would come down and get on board, and steam would be already steam up, and away she would go down the lake, and that was every day. And that was the way he travelled to work, down to the Lakeside Railway, onto his private carriage with his secretary waiting for him, and he started work as soon as the train moved out and away to Barrow.
Like an early commuter.
He was indeed, but he did it in style.
Without a shadow of a doubt. Swallow was a much later boat, built in 1911, but it's still going strong, and I took a steam cruise on it round the lake. My guide was David Scott, who pointed out to me Mr. Snyder's house.
And then the shipbuilding which followed. Of course, it's made a remarkable change to that corner of the northwest coast.
Yeah, does anybody make out like this nowadays on Lake Windermere?
Oh no, I'm afraid everything comes up on the back of a lorry made out of fantastic plastic.
Oh, that's a good description,
isn't it? Yes.
Fantastic plastic.
One of the boat builders was saying if God had intended fiberglass boats, he would have grown fiberglass trees.
Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah. Oh, thank you, David.
There we are.
Biscuits and all.
Ship's biscuits.
Oh, very good.
I've knocked the weevils out of them, so you're all right.
I'm going
That's all that's happened. He's over.
Joys of steam engines.
Yes.
You never believe this. It's like acid rain coming down out of the funnel. There's only one thing wrong with it. When it goes on your shirt, you can't get it off. Got my biscuits as well.
You're getting your biscuits damp as well, Fred.
Everybody's got to swallow a certain amount of muck during the lifetime. If you play with steam engines, you get a lot. Is it raining? It's magnificent, this. You can hardly hear the engine running, and this is certainly the best way to travel. Without a shadow of a doubt. Beautiful. If I were rich, I'd buy one. As the age of steam developed on Windermere, steam engines were starting to be used for just about everything. This ranged from providing power for the smallest, most delicate jobs like this steam-powered locksmiths that I saw when I was at Ironbridge, to great powerful engines like this. This one is at Crofton Pumping Station on the Kennet and Avon Canal near Marlborough in Wiltshire. It was used to pump water up to some high-level locks. It was because it provided such an efficient method of pumping water that it became the basic working machine of the water industry. Kew Bridge Steam Museum is in London. It's housed in the old Kew Bridge pumping station by the side of the Thames. And it claims to have the largest collection of static steam engines in the world. It's certainly a very good place to go if you want to see some of the best of steam engine technology. Clean water is one of our most basic human needs, and in the Victorian times they began to harness steam power to pump it through pipes to everybody's houses. Kew Bridge Steam Museum is housed in this Victorian pumping station. They have a wonderful collection of steam pumping machinery. And this here is a Bolton and Watts steam engine. This is Jeff, who's going to tell us all about it.
Hello, Fred.
Hello, Jeff. Yeah, tell me how old it is for a start.
Well, it was built in 1820, and it's the oldest engine we have here. But when it was built, it was in a different location. It was actually at Chelsea, where it pumped water from the River Thames. But the water at Chelsea got so badly polluted.
Well, it's like sewage.
It's sewage, that's right, So it's worked on this site between 1838 and 1944.
That's a credit to Mr. Watt, is it not?
It is a credit to Mr. Watt.
There's a wonderful collection of steam pumping engines in here. This one behind me is a cross-compound one with bell cranks on the end of the piston rods, and it works the pump rods down into the well. And this one here looks like it's come off a ship, but I don't think it has really. It's actually a triple expansion engine, and it was brought here from a pumping station in Newmarket. But the most impressive engine of them all here at Kew is the one that spent all its working life here. Right, Clive, let's get the water flowing, mate.
Right. Right, I'd like to turn the steam on, please, Fred.
Yeah.
If she starts moving. That's fine, thank you.
Yeah, I believe it's called the Grand Junction 90.
That's right, well, 90 inches, because it's 90 inches in diameter, the steam cylinder, by 11-foot stroke.
Yeah. Very precise, all this message.
Right, I think we're almost there. They say in the olden days all the waste hot water from here used to flow out to the river, and the local women used to do their washing in this stream.
I think it's true to say that this is the biggest Cornish beam pumping engine I've ever seen, you know. It pumped water to West London for over 100 years. And they say it's the biggest beam engine still working in the world. I'd rather think it is. That's probably the ultimate in beam engine technology, engineering of the highest order. The age of steam was reaching its peak. For much of the 19th and the first half of the 20th century, steam engines were providing the livelihood for thousands of people throughout Britain. Steam engines drove the machinery in the mills and factories, the rolling mills in the steelworks, and the pumps and the winding gear in the mines. They provided the motive power for transporting people and goods, and agriculture became mechanised with steam-powered threshing machines and harvesters. And it was around the middle of the 19th century that engineering and the industries devoted to making machines first started to get off the ground. To see one of the earliest engineering firms in Britain, I went to East Anglia. Richard Garrett and Sons of Leiston, here in Suffolk, were one of the pioneers in heavy engineering. And here in the Longshot Museum is a grand collection of the products that they made in the actual building that they were made in. To begin with, they manufactured threshers, seed drills, ploughs and other agricultural tools. Then the company saw there was a market for a new type of farm machinery that would be powered by steam. So they built this place. It's the site of one of the world's first assembly lines, which was originally built by Richard Garrett. And they actually manufactured portable steam engines in this building. The boilers came in at one end, and the bigger bits were made on each side, and the smaller bits were made upstairs and lowered down. And as the thing progressed, it came in at one end as a boiler and went out the other end as a completed engine. This is one of Mr. Richard Garrett's many products that he manufactured here on this site, and it's what's known as a semi-portable. You can see why, because the thing must weigh about 20 tonne. The whole reason for the semi-portable was it saved the expense of making boiler houses and foundations for engines. You know, the whole thing would be delivered straight from the works to the sawmill or wherever it were going to perform. On a trailer, no doubt pulled by one of his traction engines, and it would be there for more or less the rest of its days, driving the big rack saws and the frame saws and all the paraphernalia of a sawmill. This was the first production line for building traction engines, and for the rest of the 19th century, heavy engineering continued to grow at Garrett's with the manufacture of steam winding engines, road rollers and tractors. Then, by the beginning of the 20th, they had to adapt to meet some new competition. Well then, Kev, this is a bit of an unusual beast, isn't it?
A very unusual one now. It was actually built to try and compete with the internal combustion tractors when they first came out. Because the other difference...
Is it very hard to steer?
No, it's very sort of straightforward on the steering. A lot easier than a roller for a start. It's direct steering. When we put the new bearing in, it straightened the shaft.
When Garrett's were making engines like the Suffolk Punch, there wasn't an industry in Britain that wasn't using steam power. To see a particularly fine collection of working steam engines, I went to Liphook in Hampshire. This is the Olicum Steam Collection, and here you can see the impact that steam had on agriculture. Until the 19th century, it had been very labour intensive, but the steam engine changed all that. And here you can see demonstrations of steam-powered threshing machines and ploughing engines. And it wasn't all work. By the end of the 19th century, the steam engine provided the power for the travelling fairgrounds that began to tour the country. The task of the showman's engine was to move the rides from fur to fur and to drive the roundabouts and swing. From the mid-1890s, engines were fitted with dynamos to light the fairground. What a wonderful thing it must have been to experience the sight and sounds, the smell and the movement of the fairground back in those days. An amazing thing, the steam engine, really, and locomotives and steamrollers and traction engines. It totally relies on one man with a shovel, you know, to keep it going, keep it alive. And when you come to a big hill, you know, every other lamppost with this thing, you've got to put a shovel of coal on it, you know. In the case of a locomotive, like going up Shap, you know, I don't know how many tons of coal they used to burn, you know, to get up into Scotland. You know, shoveling non-stop to keep the thing going, like a mobile power station. It's a bit strange, really, like what's my hobby now once provided the livelihood for literally hundreds of people, you know, all over England. I've always been fascinated by the great variety of mechanical things we used to produce and looking at things that show just how inventive we used to be. This is a collection of magazines called The Engineer, and there's all sorts of stuff in it, you know, wonderful adverts and stories about struggles and all, and of big engineering feats that were done in the last century, you know. The things that interest me most in this magazine are the adverts, you know. There's some beautiful adverts were magnificent bits of machinery, you know. There's like a windmill here and beautiful self-aligning bearings, you know. The aqua thruster, that sounds a bit painful, doesn't it? all sizes. Yes. And then another one here for the Roby Trust, you know, Roby, portable, semi-portable. Robys of Lincoln were one of the great manufacturers of steam engines, and they made a huge variety of different types, including row locomotives, steamrollers, and various other stationary engines. I came across a group of enthusiasts at Tavistock down in Devon who have a very fine collection of Roby engines. And here at the Roby Trust there's a new generation being taught the engineering skills that had all but disappeared a few years ago.
Going in through there and cooling the boiler down. So, we can stop the engine, then we can open the fire hole door. Right, that needs something, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That will help build the fire up. That's it. Now we should be able to make some more steam now. Right, here's Fred.
Did you get all that, young Edward?
Yeah.
I see you managed all right. It don't matter what you do as long as you don't lose the shovel. Now then, John, how many of these young chaps have you got on your trust?
Well, at the moment we've got about 4 or 5 regulars.
Yeah.
And there are 1 or 2 extras who sort of appear now and again as the wind takes them.
You mean,
But about 4 or 5 are regular and
it's very good, really, because you know, I think I've got to one stage you're thinking at one time we were breeding a nation of little lads who, you know, got all the red hot pipes and things like that.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Well, it's where the future of our preservation movement
it is, without
lies.
a shadow of a doubt, yeah. Well, a word of advice here, Ian, they're very dangerous things then, you know, you can soon end up scalded by the steam, you know.
Oh, right.
There's some white packings now that after the Mr. Martino, a gentleman I knew, ended up getting scalded to death with one of them. These white packings, when you screw it up as tight as you can get it when it's cold, you think everything's okay, and you light the fire, and they just go like tripe, you know, there's like, you know, you can get another 4 turns on the thing, so it's very important in future when you're doing it to keep giving it a screw as the boiler's warming up. Until you can't move it no more.
I think we should take those precautions. We don't want any accidents. There's the dog there, Ian. Okay.
Now then, Phil, what have you got this young man doing here?
He's
being trained in the lubrication of the engine, Fred. And this is an important part of the engine. Because the trimming bar goes through the firebox and gets very hot. Different metals expanding at different rates. You've got to make sure there's plenty of the old grease in there to keep it running smoothly.
Right, are you going to give me a ride on it?
Of course we are. Neil can be on there as soon as you're ready.
Come on, young Neil. Put your grease gun away. This one's one of the most recent Roby engines, but I wonder if the people who put those adverts in those magazines all them years ago could ever have imagined that there would be people riding around on them for fun. But my magazines aren't just full of adverts, they've got some very interesting reading in them. I read one article about Victorian shipbuilding, and it describes Brunel's great struggle with the Great Eastern. You know, this ship was so big at the time, they never built another one for 50 years after that were as big as the Great Eastern. It took him 6 months to get it in the water, and the newspaper people ridiculed him, you know, and said he were nuts and all that sort of thing. And there were all sorts of wonderful ideas afoot to get the thing started on the slipway. One ludicrous thing would fill it full of thousands of people and get them all jumping up and down, and hopefully it might get it off the thing. But in the end, it were really Richard Tanges, a man from Birmingham, who were well into hydraulic jacks, and he was the man really who managed to move it and eventually get it in the water after 6 months of struggle. And it made Brunel an old man before his time. You know, the thing actually killed him. The last known picture of him alive were actually on the deck examining the remains of one of the funnels which there'd been an explosion in. At the time, people might have thought Brunel was mad, but it was his revolutionary advances in ship design that set the pattern for all marine architecture that was to follow, and paved the way for Britain's great shipbuilding industry. Clydeside was one of our greatest shipbuilding centres, but the yard started to close down in the 60s and 70s, and there's no trace left of all of this industry now. One of the ships that was built there was the paddle steamer Waverley. She operated on the Clyde for nearly 30 years. Hello there, how are you doing? Go find Kenneth. And now she's been preserved for people like me who want to enjoy the thrill of sailing on a real steamship. All my life I've liked steamships. When I was a little lad, you know, I once made one about 3 feet long, and I entered it for a model exhibition and I won £3.10. Never forgotten that. Here today on the Waverley, which is the last ocean-going paddle steamer in the world, I think, made here on the Firth of Clyde, and sailing down the River Clyde is quite pleasant to me, you know. I'm really enjoying it. Ah, good morning, Kenneth.
Morning, Fred.
How are you doing? It's still running as sweet as a nut, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
The 3 different sizes cylinders.
That's right. The high pressure one, which is the centre one's 24 inches diameter. It's got a 5.5 foot stroke, so it's a big engine.
Something magic about a steam engine, isn't it? Say we've had vans, but I don't know, you know, I went in the engine room on a bloody car for it the other day. Little teeny thing and the noise coming out of it, unbelievable. Magnificent, this thing. What all little boys dream about. Mr. Brunel ever did this on the Great Eastern. There's no better way to see the beautiful scenery of the Firth of Clyde than from the decks of a Clyde paddle steamer. It's magic. I wish I'd lived in the days when you could travel like this, but steam is more than just enthusiasm or nostalgia. Steam power was developed here in Britain, and it's one of our unique contributions to history. So steam like the sea should run in the blood of every Briton.